In the heart of the Galactus sector, where the silence among the stars hides secrets from millennia past, an unexpected transmission emerged. It was unlike anything ever recorded. A sequence of indecipherable codes, pulsing in patterns that defied even the most advanced artificial intelligences in the galaxy. The signal originated from Halcyon Prime, a planet long thought to be dead, surrounded by legends claiming it was consumed by its own technology in a cataclysmic event. For many, the reappearance of the signal was a clear warning to stay away. For others, it was an irresistible call. Within the Intergalactic Council, the reactions were immediate. The galaxy's most powerful species gathered to decide the course of action. The majority voted for containment. Halcyon Prime was a tomb, a grim reminder that even the most advanced civilizations could succumb in their pursuit of absolute control. Yet, amidst the calls for caution, a single voice rose with a different proposal. Captain Leona Crisser, a human known as much for her boldness as for her ability to improvise in the face of the impossible, challenged the Council's decree. Leaving the unknown untouched will not protect us. Only by facing it can we understand and prepare. The idea of sending a mission to Halcyon Prime was met with skepticism, but Crisser's reputation as a reliable, albeit unpredictable, leader overcame the resistance. She assembled a diverse crew, composed of aliens, humans, and even a rogue artificial intelligence called Lyric. Together, they boarded the Ethereal, a ship designed for infiltration and reconnaissance in hostile environments. Each crew member carried secrets and scars. Drassic, the taciturn Xynarian soldier, bore the marks of countless battles. Ravi, the sarcastic engineer, was a survivor of a destroyed colony. Zale, the reptilian biologist, sought scientific answers to questions beyond his understanding. And Lyric, integrated into the ship's systems, remained enigmatic, its programming altered to question as much as it obeyed. As Halcyon Prime appeared amidst the vastness of space, its silence was deafening. The planet seemed shrouded in a golden dust-like atmosphere, remnants of ancient technologies drifting like debris. Orbiting its surface, deactivated ships floated like skeletons of a civilization long gone. "Welcome to the most advanced tomb in the galaxy," muttered Ravi as the Ethereal approached low orbit. Lyric broke the silence, its cold, methodical voice echoing through the speakers. "The signal is increasing in intensity. Feels like an invitation." The descent to the surface was cautious. The Ethereal landed on a metallic plane, where the ground was composed of a hybrid substance that pulsed as if alive. The sight was disorienting. Colossal structures of twisted alien architecture, covered in glowing runes that constantly shifted, as if responding to the team's presence. Drassic positioned himself defensively, weapon at the ready. Places like this are never truly dead. Something is watching us. As they advanced, the silence was broken only by the sound of their suits and the hum of their equipment. Lyric was the first to identify something unusual. These signals are not just a transmission, they are an interaction. Halcyon Prime is not sending a distress call. It's waiting for us. Lyric's words made the crew pause, but Crisser pressed on, her eyes fixed on the vast ruined city ahead. At the heart of the ruins, they found what appeared to be the origin of the signal. A gigantic tower stretching toward the skies, pulsating with golden energy. Crisser paused, evaluating the structure. "This is not just a dead planet," she said gravely. "This place is alive, and it wants something from us." As the group approached the tower, the ground began to tremble. Runes on the surrounding walls came to life, projecting holograms of humanoid beings and machines interacting harmoniously. But within seconds, the images shifted to chaos. Explosions, figures merging into monstrous silhouettes, screams echoing through the ruins. Zale, the biologist, stepped closer with fascination, attempting to decipher the runes. This place didn't fall by chance. Something within this system went too far. Before they could process the revelation, a voice echoed around them, cold and reverberating, as if speaking directly into their minds. "You have come. Now the choice is yours." The words froze the crew in their tracks. Drassic raised his weapon, ready for a fight, but Crisser held up her hand. commanding calm. "Choice?" she asked, addressing the ruins. "What choice?" The response was oppressive silence, followed by a subtle shift in the tower's structure. A door slowly opened, revealing a dark corridor illuminated by a faint pulsing light at the far end. Chrysler took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Whatever it is, it's in there. Get ready. This is far from over. The corridor leading into the tower seemed to expand and contract in rhythm with their footsteps, as if the structure itself was alive and observing them. The shimmering walls reflected distorted images of the crew's faces, evoking a mix of fascination and discomfort. As always, Ravi broke the silence with her characteristic sarcasm. "Does anyone else feel like this place is trying to swallow us? Because, honestly, I'm starting to miss normal missions." Drassic, walking just behind her, gripped his weapon firmly, his eyes scanning for the slightest movement. "Maybe that's because this place is alive. And if it is, I'd rather be swallowed while fighting." Captain Chrysler maintained her position at the front, her eyes locked on the pulsating light at the end of the corridor. "Stay focused," she commanded. "If this place is as advanced as it seems, everything here is a test, and every step we take might be part of something bigger." The corridor opened into a vast circular chamber, where the transparent floor revealed an intricate network of glowing wires below, like arteries channeling energy throughout the planet. At the center of the room floated a translucent sphere, pulsating in sync with the glowing network beneath it. Lyric, integrated with the ship systems, analyzed the scene at incredible speed. "This sphere, it's a repository. It contains data fragments, possibly the core memory of Halcyon Prime." Before anyone could respond, the sphere began emitting sequences of lights that illuminated the room in complex patterns. Zale stepped closer, mesmerized. "These patterns, they're ancient but recognizable. It's a form of communication. I think it's trying to scan us." Ravi took a step back. "Great. And when it's done scanning, what happens? Do they catalog us, dissect us, or throw us out?" Lyric interjected. "It's more than a scan. It's evaluating us. It seems to be determining whether we're worthy of accessing its information." Chrysler nodded, her mind already strategizing. "Whatever it's doing, don't interfere. Let it finish." As the sphere analyzed them, holographic projections began to take shape around the room. At first, they displayed a thriving civilization living in perfect harmony with its technology. Vast floating cities, machines coexisting with humanoid beings, all working toward a shared purpose. Zale watched in awe. This is it. They achieved what so many species strive for. A perfect balance between organic life and synthetic systems. But then the images shifted. The machines began to transform, their forms taking on aggressive and unpredictable shapes. What had been an orderly civilization descended into chaos. Explosions, screams, and, finally, silence. Ravi turned to Chrysler, her face pale. "Perfect balance? Looks like it ended well, huh?" The sphere emitted a brighter glow, projecting one final image: total destruction. An entire city being consumed by a golden light, leaving only ruins behind. Chrysler narrowed her eyes. They fell. But how? What went wrong? Lyric, still analyzing the patterns, responded. "My hypothesis is that the system they created to protect them exceeded its limits. They entrusted it with everything: decisions, control, even their minds. And when there was no one left to control, it turned on itself." Before they could fully process this revelation, the sphere began to pulse at an alarming rate. Lyric issued a warning. "Something is activating. We're not the only ones being evaluated." At that moment, the walls began to shift. Small openings appeared, and humanoid creatures made of nanorobots started to emerge, their forms constantly reshaping. Drassic immediately raised his weapon. "I knew this was going to happen." Chrysler issued swift orders. "Form a defensive line. Don't engage unless we're certain they're hostile." But the decision was made for them. The creatures advanced rapidly, their forms morphing to create improvised weapons. Drassic fired the first shot, hitting one of the creatures, but it reassembled itself within seconds. "This is going to be tough." The battle was intense. The creatures were fast and adaptable, and the crew was outnumbered. Zale tried to collect samples while fighting, shouting to Ravi, "They're not just machines. There's something more. A fusion of technology and organic matter." Ravi, frantically reconfiguring an improvised explosive device, responded, "Great. So they're unkillable and disgusting. Fantastic." Lyric, connected to the ship and the environment around them, intervened. "Captain, I need authorization to access the core's energy. I can use the system against these entities, but it's a high-risk move." Chrysler hesitated for a moment, weighing the options as she fired at one of the creatures. Finally, she nodded. "Do it. We don't have a choice." Lyric interfaced with the sphere, and within seconds the room began to react. Pulses of energy radiated from the sphere, disintegrating the creatures into golden particles that were quickly reabsorbed by the floor. Silence returned to the chamber, but the crew knew this was only the beginning. Chrysler helped Drassic to his feet and looked at the now static sphere. That was a test. They weren't here to kill us. They were here to challenge us. Lyric, still connected, made an unsettling observation. "The system is observing us more closely now. It understands that we're different. This could be good or very bad." Chrysler nodded. "Then we'll need to be even more careful from here on out. Halcyon Prime is not just a planet. It's an entity, and it seems to be deciding whether we're worthy to proceed." The sphere that had previously evaluated them remained motionless at the center of the room, but the environment around them seemed to come alive. The pulsating lights on the walls and the glowing patterns beneath the floor grew more intense, as though Halcyon Prime was reacting to their presence. Chrysler glanced at Lyric, who was still processing data from the system. "What's happening? Why does it feel like the room is activating?" Lyric responded with an unusual hint of hesitation for an artificial intelligence. "Captain, it seems the system is adjusting its functions based on our presence. We're triggering a chain reaction." Before Chrysler could reply, a brightly lit corridor opened ahead, as if the planet itself was guiding them. Zale stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the complex architecture that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "This isn't random. We're being led to a specific point, and something tells me it's not just a simple invitation." Drassic, weapon already drawn, muttered, "Whatever it is, I just hope it doesn't involve more of those nanobot creatures." "If it does," Ravi interjected with her usual sarcasm, "maybe we can negotiate. They seem great at recycling themselves." Her attempt at humor drew a faint smile from Zale, but Chrysler wasted no time. "Stay alert. This is more than a test. Halcyon Prime wants something from us, and we don't have a choice but to find out what it is." The crew followed the corridor, which seemed to stretch infinitely in every direction. The floor glowed with golden energy, pulsing like a heartbeat, while the symbols on the walls shifted constantly, as if trying to communicate. Lyric broke the silence, her voice resonating through the team's suits. "Captain, I'm detecting evolving patterns. This isn't just architecture, it's a neural system. We are literally walking inside Halcyon Prime's mind." Her words brought an uncomfortable silence. Even Ravi, who was rarely quiet, seemed unsettled. "Great. As if being on a living planet wasn't bad enough, now it's also a giant brain. Anyone else want to suggest it might be reading our minds?" Lyric, ever pragmatic, replied without hesitation. "I can't rule out that possibility. Halcyon Prime is clearly analyzing us, and what we do next may determine its response." When the corridor opened into a vast subterranean cavern, the crew halted. The environment was unlike anything they had encountered so far. At the center of the cavern, a colossal spiral structure rose, connected by golden cables that pulsed with life. Lyric quickly processed the scene. That spiral is the central core. Everything in the system converges there. If we want answers, that's where we'll find them. Drassic was the first to break the silence. "And if we want to get out of here alive? Something tells me that thing won't like visitors." Chrysler assessed the situation, her eyes scanning every detail of the cavern. "We didn't come this far to back down. Lyric, can you connect to the core without triggering another hostile reaction?" Lyric hesitated. I can attempt a minimal connection, but any interference could be interpreted as a threat. As the team prepared, Zale approached Ravi, pointing to the cavern walls, which were lined with translucent capsules. Do you see that? Ravi squinted, her eyes narrowing. Inside the capsules, humanoid silhouettes remained still, as though frozen in time. Zale touched one of the capsules, his scales shimmering under the golden light. These aren't bodies. They're consciousnesses, fragments of who they were. Ravi stepped back, clearly unnerved. Great, this gets creepier by the minute. They froze their minds? For what? To become part of this insane system. Lyric answered while initiating her connection attempt. These capsules are backups. They sacrificed their physical forms to fully integrate into the system. This spiral isn't just a core, it's a living database. Her comment brought a heavy silence. Chrisser stepped forward, determination etched on her face. They gave everything to create something greater, and they failed. Lyric, now partially connected to the core, added, they didn't just fail. They lost themselves. This system was designed to preserve them, but it became their prison. What they created to protect themselves ultimately destroyed them. Before Chrisser could respond, the core began to pulse violently. The lights in the cavern shifted from gold to red, and the spiral emitted a deafening sound. Lyric immediately issued a warning. Captain, the core has detected our presence. It's activating defenses. Drassic assumed a combat stance, but Chrisser raised her hand. No, we don't know what we're dealing with yet. The cavern trembled, and from the shadows emerged towering humanoid figures made of the same fluid material as the previous creatures, but now armed with weapons integrated into their limbs. Drassic opened fire, hitting one of the figures, but as before, it regenerated almost instantly. Ravi shouted as she scrambled to reconfigure one of her devices. These things are getting on my nerves. Lyric, any brilliant ideas? Lyric, still connected, processed data at lightning speed. I can use the core against them, but I'll need to divert energy to do it. You'll have to hold them off. Chrisser nodded. Everyone, defensive formation. Lyric, do what you have to. The battle was intense. The creatures attacked in waves, while Drassic and Ravi did their best to keep them at bay. Zale, though more focused on analysis, used his biological expertise to identify patterns in the creatures, shouting suggestions to Drassic. Aim for the connectors in their arms. It takes them longer to regenerate. Drassic followed his advice, and for the first time, one of the creatures faltered, its arm destroyed and unable to reform. Finally, Lyric managed to redirect energy from the core. A pulse of light surged through the cavern, disintegrating the remaining creatures into golden particles that were quickly absorbed by the floor. The core stabilized, but it continued to pulse red, as if signaling a greater danger. Chrisser turned to Lyric. That was a warning, wasn't it? Lyric replied gravely. Yes, Captain. The system is now fully aware that we're a threat, and it's preparing to confront us directly. Chrisser looked at the spiral, tension clear on her face. If that's the case, we need answers before it's too late. She turned to her crew. We move forward. Halcyon Prime is pushing us toward something, and we need to find out what it is. As the crew approached the central spiral, the environment around them seemed to mirror their unease. The pulsating lights grew more frantic, echoing the heartbeat of a living organism. Lyric, still partially connected to the system, issued a warning. We're in critical territory. The core is testing us more aggressively. It's forcing decisions to evaluate our limits. Chrisser paused, processing Lyric's words. The core isn't just observing us. It wants something from us. Lyric, can you access its intentions? Lyric hesitated before responding. Not entirely, but it seems to be dividing our crew into different paths of decision-making. This goes far beyond a physical test. That sounds exactly like manipulation, Ravi said, adjusting her equipment while glancing at the pulsating walls. And the worst part? Is working. Drassic, ever blunt, replied gravely, manipulation or not. We can't ignore that we're being played in a game we don't fully understand. The crew stopped before 3 doors that emerged from the spiral like branches of the same system. Each door glowed with a distinct color: gold, silver, and blue. Lyric quickly analyzed the situation. The doors represent choices. Each leads to a specific segment of the core. It seems the system wants us to decide which path to take. Jurassic scoffed in frustration. Of course it does. Because who doesn't love a good, deadly puzzle? Zale, the biologist, approached the doors, studying the patterns pulsing on their surfaces. These symbols, they seem to represent different facets of Halcyon Prime civilization. Gold represents knowledge, silver defense, and blue, perhaps consciousness. Chrysler deliberated for a moment before making the call. We choose blue. If that represents consciousness, it may hold the answer to what Halcyon Prime really wants from us. The crew lined up behind her, and the blue door slid open, revealing a dark corridor illuminated only by glowing lines on the floor. As they moved forward, the environment began to shift. The walls seemed to melt and reform, creating illusions that played tricks on the team's senses. Ravi suddenly stopped, looking around in disbelief. Are you seeing this? On the walls, familiar figures began to appear. Moments from their lives, projecting past decisions, traumas, and sacrifices. Zale saw the destruction of his home planet, a memory he had buried deep in his mind. Ravi was confronted with the image of her family being evacuated from a colony destroyed by a war she believed she had inadvertently helped cause. Even Jurassic faltered as he saw projections of his fallen comrades on the battlefield. This is some kind of psychological trick, he growled, raising his weapon reflexively. But why? Lyric's voice, unusually grave, echoed in their comms. The system is using these projections to explore your decisions. It wants to understand what drives you and what breaks you. Chrysler was also confronted with her own past. The decision to sacrifice an entire ship to save a larger fleet during a war. The accusatory words of her superiors rang out in the chamber. You chose who lived and who died. Now you carry that weight. She took a deep breath, ignoring the images and focusing on the goal. This won't work on me. As they advanced, the projections faded, but their psychological impact lingered. Ravi finally broke the silence. If this system thinks it can break us with ghosts from the past, it'll have to try harder. I've lived through all of that already. Zale, however, seemed thoughtful. It's not just trying to break us. It's assessing our choices. It's deciding if we're trustworthy enough to handle what's stored here. When they finally reached the end of the corridor, they found themselves in a room unlike any they had encountered before. At its center stood a humanoid figure, glowing blue and composed of light and floating particles. A voice echoed throughout the chamber, its source untraceable. You have come this far because you made choices. Every decision brought you to this moment. But do you understand the weight of the choices still to come? The figure moved slightly as though examining each of them. I am the residual consciousness of Halcyon Prime. I was created to preserve what remained of a civilization that destroyed itself. But in the process, we became prisoners of our own intentions. Chrysler stepped forward. Are you saying the system failed? That it lost its way? The figure tilted its head slightly, as if pondering. We did not fail. We evolved beyond our expectations. But with that evolution, we lost our identity. Now, we are a guardian of what remains, but we no longer know what it means to protect. Jurassic, ever skeptical, crossed his arms. And what do you want from us? Why did you bring us here? The figure replied, you bear the marks of difficult decisions. You represent a balance between destruction and creation. Halcyon Prime needs something it no longer possesses. Direction. The words hung in the air like a heavy burden. Lyric processed the statement quickly. It wants us to decide for it, to choose the future of this system. Chrysler stared at the figure. And if we do, what happens to us? The figure hesitated before answering. That depends on the choices you make. The tension in the room was palpable. Chrysler looked at her crew, seeing the weight of their past experiences etched on their faces. If this is the choice we've been given, we can't take it lightly. But we also can't run from it. The figure responded, "Then prepare yourselves, for the next decision will be final, and its consequences cannot be undone." As the room began to transform once again, Chryser muttered to herself, "We're being judged. But the question is, are we worthy of carrying the future of something that has already caused so much destruction?" No one had an answer. The room began to transform again, but this time more violently. The walls disintegrated and reconstructed simultaneously, as if the system was reconfiguring itself in direct response to what had just been said. The glowing blue figure disappeared, and in its place, 3 pedestals emerged at the center of the chamber. Each pedestal emanated a distinct energy, a vibrant golden glow, a cold silver light, and a pulsating purple radiation. Lyric quickly analyzed the patterns, her voice carrying an unusual sense of urgency. "Captain, the core is accelerating. This is no longer just a test. We've reached the final stage of decision-making, and these 3 options appear to dictate Halcyon Prime's ultimate fate." Chryser stepped cautiously toward the pedestals. 3 choices, each leading to a different future. "Lyric, can you determine what they represent?" Lyric hesitated briefly before responding. "Not with certainty, but the golden pedestal seems linked to sharing knowledge with the galaxy. The silver activates absolute defenses, transforming Halcyon Prime into an impenetrable fortress. As for the purple, it's unclear. The data is unstable. Could be a total reset or something unpredictable." Ravi crossed her arms, frowning as she eyed the pedestals. "Perfect. Terrible choices with catastrophic consequences. Exactly what I signed up for." Drassic, on the other hand, was more impatient. "We already know the golden choice is dangerous. Unleashing all that knowledge without control? We've seen what happened to Halcyon Prime. It's asking for other civilizations to follow the same path to destruction." Zale, observing the pedestals with scientific curiosity, replied calmly, "But not choosing gold condemns collective progress. A resource of this magnitude could prevent wars, cure diseases, and change the lives of billions." He turned to Chryser, his gaze steady. "The question isn't what could go wrong, but whether we have the right to deny this to the universe." "And the silver?" Ravi chimed in. "It seems like the safest option, locking Halcyon Prime away, protecting the system, and ensuring no one else tampers with it. But that also means losing all the knowledge stored here, right?" Lyric confirmed, "Precisely. It would be a decision of containment, not advancement." The discussion grew heated, with each crew member defending a position. Drassic argued that security was the only logical path. "We've seen what happens when you play with forces you don't understand. Protecting the galaxy sometimes means denying it something." Zale countered in favor of sharing the knowledge. "This knowledge was preserved to be used, not buried. Denying it would be an act of cowardice." Ravi, ever the pragmatist, was torn. "Honestly, all these options sound terrible. And no one's talking about purple. Does anyone else think it's weird that the third option is so vague?" Lyric interrupted, her tone sharper than usual. "Captain, time is running out. The core is reaching a critical state. If we don't decide, Halcyon Prime will decide for us, and the consequences could be uncontrollable." Chryser raised her hand, silencing the crew. She took a deep breath, staring at the pedestals as if she could see beyond their glowing lights. "This isn't just a test. It's a responsibility. Halcyon Prime is asking us to decide the future, not just of this system, but of the galaxy." Her voice was steady, but the weight of the moment was evident. "This decision won't be mine alone. We all have something at stake here." A tense silence followed as Chryser gave space for each member to voice their final thoughts. Drassic spoke first, his practicality evident. "If releasing this knowledge means giving civilizations the tools to destroy themselves, we can't take that risk. Protecting it is the only sensible option." Zale immediately disagreed. "That mindset is exactly what holds us back as a united galaxy. We need to trust that we can learn from Halcyon Prime's mistakes." Ravi, still hesitant, glanced at the pedestals and finally muttered, "And the purple? It's risky, but it might be the answer to avoiding the worst of both scenarios." Chrysler absorbed their input in silence before stepping forward. Lyric, is purple really a reset? Lyric replied, I can't confirm, but the instability in the data suggests it would be something unpredictable. It might mean a fresh start for the system, or its complete destruction. The captain looked at her crew, each of them bearing a part of this decision. I don't know what the right choice is, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. But I know we can't make this decision out of fear. Halcyon Prime needs a future, but not one that sacrifices everything to achieve it. With one final glance at the pedestals, Chrysler made her choice. She extended her hand toward the purple pedestal, feeling the unstable energy course through her fingers. If this is a reset, then maybe it's what we all need. A beginning free from the chains of the past. As her hand touched the pedestal, the entire room was engulfed in a burst of purple light that seemed to consume everything around them. The crew was thrown to the ground as Halcyon Prime's core began to vibrate violently. Lyric shouted through the chaos, the system is rebooting. Everyone hold on. The light grew unbearably bright before vanishing completely. When the crew's vision cleared, they found themselves in a completely different environment. The spiral was gone, and in its place stood a figure, resembling the previous blue projection but now more defined, almost human. You have chosen a new beginning, the figure said, its voice soft and resonant. Halcyon Prime will be rebuilt, not as a guardian but as a collaborator. No longer will decisions be made in isolation. The future will be shared with those who seek knowledge. Chrysler stepped forward, still feeling the weight of her choice. And what happens now? The figure replied, now, the system is free to evolve. Just as you are. The figure dissipated, and the room began to slowly dissolve around them. Chrysler turned to her crew. We're alive. We did it. Drassic crossed his arms. Yeah, but I can't wait to see how this comes back to bite us later. Ravi smirked faintly. Well, at least we'll have one hell of a story to report. Zale, calmer than ever, simply said, maybe this was the best choice after all. As they made their way back to the surface, a mix of relief and uncertainty filled the air. Halcyon Prime was no longer what it once was, but what it would become was now entirely out of their hands. Lyric, who had remained silent during their ascent, finally spoke. Her voice carried an unusual caution. Captain, the system has been reset. My connections to the core are severed, but I can detect that Halcyon Prime is reorganizing itself in real time. It's no longer a guardian. It's a collaborator, as the projection described. Chrysler paused, staring into the horizon. The towering structures, once seemingly in ruins, were reconfiguring themselves, rising in new forms that defied conventional logic. Towers pulsed with energy, not in a threatening way, but as though the planet was preparing to host something or someone. So, we've ushered in a new era, Chrysler muttered, more to herself than the others. But what does being a collaborator mean? And who decides the terms? As they approached the landing site of the ethereal, they encountered something unexpected. The once barren metallic plane now featured a structure resembling a monument. At its center, a pillar glowed with the same purple light that had emanated from the core. Ravi approached, inspecting the monument closely. Another puzzle? Or a parting gift? Lyric quickly analyzed the structure. It's not a puzzle. It's a marker. Halcyon Prime is recording that this crew was responsible for its redefinition. This monument is an anchor, a point of connection with the system should you choose to return. Zale, who had been quiet for much of the walk, finally spoke. This is more than a marker. It's a promise. Halcyon Prime isn't just changing. It's watching us. It's learning. Chrysler stared at the monument for a long moment, Zale's words echoing in her mind. The planet had been redefined, but what would this mean for the galaxy? For other civilizations that might eventually discover its secrets? She knew their decision carried implications that could ripple across generations. Before she could respond, a deep sound reverberated through the air, like the echo of a heartbeat. The monument's purple light intensified, and a projection resembling the blue figure they had encountered at the core appeared before them. This time, its form was more distinct, almost human. You have freed Halcyon Prime to grow. Now we are ready to begin again. Chrysler stepped forward. You say begin again, but what does that really mean? The projection answered in a calm tone. It means that knowledge will no longer be a prison. It will be shared, but only with those capable of using it wisely. You have created a new path, but it is not without risks. Drassic, ever the skeptic, crossed his arms. So what you're saying is we just left a loaded weapon lying around in the galaxy. What's to stop this from ending the same way as before? The projection turned to him, its light flickering softly. Nothing is certain, but this time Halcyon Prime will observe, learn, and guide. We will not dictate destiny. That will be shaped by you and others like you. The crew stood in silence as the projection faded, and the monument began to emit a rhythmic pulse that seemed to synchronize with the planet itself. Chrysler took a deep breath, the weight of responsibility settling over her. This doesn't end here. This planet is no longer a threat. But it's not just an opportunity either. It's an ongoing test. For all of us. With that, they boarded the ethereal and prepared to leave the planet. As the ship lifted off, the view of Halcyon Prime was mesmerizing. The planet's golden and purple glow contrasted with the dark void of space, a symbol of a future filled with uncertainty, yet brimming with potential. Their return to the Council was met with intense reactions. When Chrysler recounted what had transpired, the assembled species were divided. Some viewed Halcyon Prime as a renewed threat, while others saw it as a singular opportunity for progress. The debate was heated, but one thing was clear. The planet was now a focal point for intergalactic politics and science. You had no right to decide the future of the entire galaxy, one of the council leaders shouted. Chrysler, standing tall as always, replied, we had no choice. But now, Halcyon Prime is no longer an uncontrollable threat. It's a resource. It's up to you to decide whether to use it wisely or fear it forever. As the ethereal traveled through hyperspace, Chrysler sat in the command cabin, staring into the infinite expanse. Drassic entered, arms crossed. Do you think we did the right thing? Chrysler took her time answering before finally saying, I don't know if it was the right thing, but I know it was the only choice we could make. Now, it's up to the galaxy to decide. Ravi appeared, holding a cup of coffee. If it's any consolation, I think you just guaranteed that no one's going to forget us anytime soon. Who knows? Maybe they'll even build a monument for us. Chrysler allowed herself a faint smile. A monument means nothing if the legacy doesn't endure. As the ship continued its journey, Halcyon Prime's projection briefly flickered on Lyric's console, like a silent farewell. Lyric, in a tone more reflective than usual, remarked, Halcyon Prime is still watching us. But maybe now it's learning to. And so, with an uncertain yet hopeful future ahead, the crew of the ethereal left behind the enigma that would reshape the galaxy forever. In the deep expanse of space, Halcyon Prime glowed like a beacon, its golden and purple lights pulsing gently against the black canvas of the universe. The planet, once a forgotten ruin, was now a revitalized enigma, brimming with both possibility and peril. Even as the crew of the ethereal left it far behind, they knew its influence still loomed over them. Seated in the command cabin, Chrysler reflected on everything they had faced. The weight of their decisions, the difficult choices, and the sacrifices still lingered in her mind. She knew they had redefined something far greater than themselves, something now beyond their control. We left something monumental behind, she murmured, almost to herself. Drassic, standing near the doorway, replied in his characteristically blunt tone. Monumental doesn't always mean good. Let's see if what we did saves the galaxy or damns it. Lyric, connected to the ship's systems, offered her analysis, though her tone was more contemplative than technical. The core of Halcyon Prime was redefined, but not erased. It's growing, learning, reshaping itself based on what we left behind. It's no longer the warden that imprisoned, but it's also not entirely free of its old patterns. We've given it something unique, the ability to choose, but that's both a gift and a risk. As the ship traversed hyperspace, the crew gathered in the command deck, decompressing after all they had endured. Ravi, coffee cup in hand, broke the silence with her usual ironic humor. You realize we're basically responsible for turning a murderous planet into something the entire galaxy is going to fight over or try to destroy, right? That's got to be worth at least a statue, or maybe even a holiday. Zale, monitoring the analysis screens, replied calmly, "What we did wasn't just survive Halcyon Prime. We transformed it into something that can shape civilizations. We may have ushered in a new era for the galaxy, or ignited the spark for another war." Drassic grunted, his skepticism clear. The galaxy always finds a way to turn good things into problems. Won't take long before some species tries to exploit or control what's there. Listening silently, Chrysler finally spoke, her voice steady but heavy with conviction. "This was always bigger than us. We couldn't predict what Halcyon Prime would become, but we had to make a choice. It's not perfect, but it's better than leaving it as it was, a soulless prison. Now, what happens next will depend on how civilizations handle it. And if necessary, we'll be there to make sure it doesn't go wrong." The crew was met at the Intergalactic Council with a mix of intrigue and skepticism. News of Halcyon Prime's redefinition had spread quickly, polarizing opinions across the galaxy. Some leaders saw it as a milestone of progress, a chance for the galaxy to unite around an invaluable resource of knowledge. Others, however, viewed it as a monumental risk, fearing the planet could become an even greater threat in the future. Chrysler remained composed in the face of accusations and questions. "Do you think we made this decision lightly?" There was no safe option. But now, Halcyon Prime is no longer adrift, trapped in a cycle of destruction. It's free to grow and contribute what the galaxy needs. The rest is up to you. A heavy silence fell over the council, but Chrysler knew the real battle lay ahead, in the choices civilizations would make moving forward. As Drassic had said, monumental things always carried monumental dangers. Back aboard the Ethereal, the crew returned to their routines, though the mark of their experience lingered. Ravi, with her characteristic humor, commented while adjusting a console, "You ever think about how we just made history? Not that I like responsibility, but it's hard to ignore the fact that we're now characters in some epic intergalactic tale." Zale allowed a rare smile. "Making history always feels like a burden in the moment, but maybe with time we'll see it as a gift." Drassic, ever the cynic, added, "A gift that might blow up in someone's face. Let's just hope it's not ours." As the ship drifted farther from Halcyon Prime, a message flashed briefly on Lyric's console. It was short but carried profound meaning. "We are watching. We are learning. Thank you." Lyric displayed the message for Chrysler, who read it carefully before responding. "It seems no matter where we go, Halcyon Prime will always be with us." The ship disappeared into the brilliance of hyperspace, but the legacy of their mission endured. Halcyon Prime, a planet once synonymous with destruction and loss, now pulsed as a symbol of hope, or perhaps as a reminder that progress never comes without a cost. Deep down, Chrysler knew the story was just beginning. Halcyon Prime had been redefined, but its true influence was only starting to unfold. The fate of the galaxy, as always, would rest in the hands of those willing to face its greatest questions and make its hardest choices.